Welcome back. I'm David Knight. We were just talking about some health issues in the Northeast. A judge saying that the insurance companies that have to pay for medical marijuana, they were freaking out. They wanted to give them addictive, dangerous opioids. Well, we're going to talk about another very dangerous thing that is happening across this country. And, of course, that's the mandated vaccines. Dangerous to our freedom as well as to our bodies. And I just had Del on. We're going to talk to Del Bigtree. I just had him on a week or two ago. We were talking about the vaccine mandate in California, destroying the doctor-patient relationship, intruding these bureaucrats in state government into that, doing an ex post facto prosecution, essentially, on a doctor, taking action against him for something that was done 4 years ago after they just passed this law, but taking away our informed consent. That's the most important thing. Destroying your medical freedom, taking away your informed consent and your decision, and that's a big part of what Del is investigating. He has his Informed Consent Action Network, which comes out as ICAN. He's got a website, www.icandecide.com. Yeah, I can decide. I can look at the information and I can make decisions about my health care and my family's health care, and I have the right to make that decision. And so when we see what is happening, it's not just our rights that are threatened, it's also our bodies that are threatened. Previous discussions I've had with Del Bigtree, he's talked about the fact that they have verified, the Health and Human Services have verified there's been 59,000 injuries from vaccines in 2016, including 432 deaths. But then they have also said in their own internal studies at Health and Human Services that their system only captures 1% of the injuries. So multiply that by 100. 5.9 million vaccine injuries and 43,000 deaths, according to the Health and Human Services. So Del Bigtree, who was a producer of the film Vaxxed, and you remember that from the Tribeca Film Festival, where it was going to be screened, and then all of these wonderful people in Hollywood who care so much about freedom of speech said, we don't want this film shown. We want you to censor a film. And they got it thrown out, so they didn't screen it. But he's been putting that around. He has another thing to explain to us that goes back to the creation of no liability for the vaccine companies going back to 1986. You can find Del on Twitter at Del Bigtree, also on Facebook at Highwire Talk. So joining us now is Del Bigtree. Del, tell us about this FOIA request and why this is so important, going back to the liability that was taken away from the vaccine companies back in 1986.
Yeah, David, I really appreciate you having me on. This is very important. We filed a FOIA request. Now, what people have to understand is in 1986, there were so many lawsuits against vaccines that vaccine makers said they were about to go bankrupt, and they blackmailed our government under Ronald Reagan and said, we're going to stop making all vaccines unless you protect us from liability. So an act that is for like no other product, in 1986, we took all liability away from vaccine makers. So we took away the only market force that would drive vaccines to be made safer, to evolve the science, to keep it moving forward. If you can sue, and like every other company, an airbag fails or a car seat fails, we make a better product so that we don't get sued. That's how our government works. That's what a free market does. We took that away in one of the greatest government overreaches of all times and took liability away from the industry. But what's interesting is Congress knew that that was going to be very dangerous. They knew that if they took the liability away, then there was no incentive for the pharmaceutical industry to do safety testing, which is what, with the Informed Consent Action Network, that's what we've been challenging, is that there's no safety testing going on. So what they did was they made Health and Human Services, which is the head of our entire health agency, government health agency in America, they put them in charge of safety and said, okay, since the industry will not do it and there's no incentive, you're now responsible. And so what we did is in the 86 Act, it actually mandates that Health and Human Services has got to, every 2 years, report to the Congress and talk about, it says it right here, it says, to promote the development of childhood vaccines that result in fewer and less serious adverse reactions than those vaccines on the market on December 22nd, 1987, when this law went into place. They are supposed to be making them safer and reporting to Congress every 2 years how they're doing it. So we simply made a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, and asked to see those recommendations that they had made every 2 years since 1987, and every reference or discussion or email that discussed how they were making vaccines safer, the safety studies that were going on in these products since we know the industry is not doing it. Well, our FOIA request was denied for over 8 months. We kept saying, we're still waiting for a response. By the way, they only have 20 days. So finally, in April, we filed a lawsuit against Health and Human Services and said, we're demanding that you respond to our request to talk about what recommendations you've made. And we gave them 3 choices. Either you tell us what you've done, as we've requested in our FOIA request, explain to us why this is information that we shouldn't be able to see, or tell us you haven't done anything. And in the end, they acquiesced and they signed this document I'm holding right here. And by the way, our lawyer representing on this was Robert F. Kennedy Jr., one of the great environmental attorneys that's currently suing Monsanto over glyphosate and the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So he worked on this with us, but they signed and admitted, get this, David, that in the last 30 years, not a single meeting has been held, not a single safety study has been done, nothing's been written on a napkin, no emails been passed. They have 0. They searched all their files, is what they say here, and signed to it, and we have not done the job that our Congress and the American people expected us to do. So that leaves us in a position now where officially nobody is evolving vaccines. We have essentially, this is like opening up a border where we are just allowing like poison products from the pharmaceutical industry as a floodgate straight into our children without any stopgaps or any science going on whatsoever. Think about what happened. We took away liability at a time where they were getting so many lawsuits they couldn't survive. So somebody was going to have to make those products safer. That was supposed to be Health and Human Services, and now they've admitted they didn't do it. So these dangerous products that were getting sued like crazy have multiplied from that moment, from the 10 vaccines that were dangerous at that time to now 53 vaccines we're giving to our kids, none of them being tested for safety. And we can only assume they're as dangerous as the others, especially when you look at the stats you just said, potentially 5.9 million vaccine injuries just in 2016 alone. I think this is a huge development. And what it's leading to, David, is I think we've now got to step up and say we want to see the 1986 Act repealed. This overreach of government hasn't even done its job to protect us. So if vaccines are so safe and effective, why don't we just put the liability back on the industry and let the market decide how safe and effective? And let's see how many lawsuits and let's see how many vaccines they decide to inject into our kids without our choice when we can sue them.
Wow, that's amazing because, you know, I remember just a couple of years ago, the big pharmaceutical companies coming out and saying, we're stopping all research on antibiotics and we're only going to have vaccines from here on out. Well, we know now why they're doing that. I mean, there is liability, yes, with anything that they do. My mother had a stroke in reaction to an antibiotic. And so anything that they produce can have some negative consequences, but they can't be sued if it's because of a vaccine. And they don't have to test the vaccines for safety. And nobody in the government is testing them for safety. So they have absolutely no liability. Of course, they would stop doing any antibiotics or any other kind of research. They would just start producing vaccines left and right because there's no downside on that. They don't have to do any studies, and they don't have any liability when somebody is harmed. But we're told that we have to take the vaccines, and our kids have to take them so many more than they ever did. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we have bombshell news here that Del Bigtree has brought us. His organization, working with Robert Kennedy's son, I think it's Robert Kennedy Jr., I think is his name. Is that correct, Del? Robert Kennedy Jr.? Yep. Yes. They have found something very amazing, and that is after the vaccine companies were given immunity in 1986 because so many people were suing them for adverse vaccine reactions. You know, those things that we're told today don't happen. Well, in 1986, it was happening so frequently that they said we need to have legal immunity against this. And everybody said, well, what are we going to do to make sure the people are safe? Because that's why you have people sue in court. And they said, well, we're going to have the Health and Human Services do this. And as Del pointed out, he quoted the rule for Health and Human Services going back to 1987. They were supposed to promote the development and assure improvements and reduce the risks of adverse reactions to vaccines. At the time, they recognized that they had those such things. And today, they don't recognize that. But then as they sued for they got stonewalled, they had to sue for the records, the FOIA requests, and then eventually come back and say, you know what, we haven't done anything for 31 years. Here we are in 2018. This was back in 2017. They haven't done a thing. Zero, zip, nada, nothing. No research about adverse reactions. They just tell people, shut up, take your vaccine. or we'll withhold schooling from your kid, or as we see in Australia, they're going to, first they said we're going to withhold child deductions. Now they're saying we're going to fine you. Every couple of weeks, we're going to fine you that your kids are not vaccinated. And, you know, Del, when we look at this, the last time you were on, we were talking about what happened in California with Dr. Bob Sears. It was either the state government or the medical board or somebody taking disciplinary reaction against him. And what they said was that he hadn't done sufficient research, that he had taken the word of the mother. And he says, well, that's usual practice. So we take the word of parents as to what happened to their kids in terms of reaction. We take that as a good source. I said, no, you should have done medical research about this kid somehow. And because of that, we're going to take all these disciplinary actions against you. They may eventually take his medical license, but they haven't done anything. They haven't done any research for 31 years about any of these vaccines. So you've got no research. They haven't done any research on any vaccine, and they have vaccinated tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of people in these last 31 years with no research.
No research and with terrible results. I mean, I think one of the things that people really don't realize is they'll say to themselves, well, it's been working, we stopped polio, things like that. When you look at the health of our children, they're the sickest they've ever been. Everyone's got, there's asthma everywhere, ADD, ADHD, depression in girls, childhood leukemias. I mean, the list goes on, and everyone knows it. You're all medicating your kids. Why do they have to be on drugs? Why is 1 in 4 kids leaving elementary school on a drug they're going to be on the rest of their lives? Because
it's the classic thing. The operation was successful. It's the classic thing. The operation was successful, but the patient died. Look, you can treat a condition, but if you, let's say that even if your polio vaccine is effective, if you put SV40, simian virus 40 in there that gives the kids cancer, that's a problem. I have a problem with that.
Exactly. So, these are products, and why are they making us sick? And there's more and more studies all over the world proving that these vaccines are actually causing multiple sclerosis, cancer, autism. We know this as fact now. We can state that that is the actual science. And if Health and Human Services that just signed our lawsuit, this court order that isn't doing the science, at least go read the science that's being done around the world. If you're not going to do your own science, then at least learn to read the science that's being done all over the world. We are in jeopardy here, and our government is being commandeered by this industry. It's the #1 most powerful lobby in Washington, and it's gonna buy your next president. It's gonna buy your next congressman, your senator. People have got to get out. One of the things we're asking people to do, David, is just go to our website, icandecide.org, and just click on the government button, and you'll have this signed order from the court that says that we did not do our job, we did not protect you, we did not end up doing any safety studies or anything. And below that, you'll also find our white paper, which lays out all the issues we have with vaccines. And we want people to go to their state capitals and drop in on their local congressman and their local senator and say, you know what, it's time to get rid of the 1986 Act, and you've got to protect us. And we've also got to empower our state governments to step up and allow us freedom of choice. This federal government overreach has got to end.
That's right. You should never allow anybody to produce something as dangerous as drugs and have absolutely no liability. And you should never have the government come in and say, you don't get to make a choice about your medical treatments. Where are all these people who say, my body, my choice? They don't care about this stuff. It's absolutely amazing to me that it's typically the same people on the same side of the thing that say, well, we want a woman's health and her right to choose, but they don't want a woman's right to choose. They don't want a man's right to choose. They don't want a parent's right to choose about anything.
That's absolutely right. And if you're taking away the right to choose, boy, you better be extra vigilant in making sure the things that you're forcing onto your population are safe. And what we're finding out, there is zero vigilance at all, David.
They've done nothing. Wow. That's absolutely amazing. And that is exactly right. People are going to have to do this at a grassroots. That's right. They're going to have to do this if you care about your freedom, you're going to have to do something about it. We say this all the time. Everybody wants to talk about the Supreme Court justices, and they want to get all involved in that fight. And yet, you need to realize that nobody's going to hand you your freedom. You're going to have to take it back. And it doesn't matter what the issue is. You're not going to have Supreme Court justices hand it to you. You're not going to have people in Washington give you your freedom. You're going to have to do this from the bottom up. And Dell has got a great thing here in terms of going to, again, it's at icandecide.com, and you click on the government tab there, and they can see that the government, you can see the ruling there where they say, we've done nothing for the last 31 years to examine the safety of any of these vaccines, and that's over and above the efficacy. Those are two different issues. You know, it can be effective. You might believe that the vaccines are effective, but are they safe? Are they going to have all these other side effects?
Right. I mean, if you're curing measles, which was 4 days of discomfort, but getting cancer or autism instead, is that a win? I mean, really, these are the questions people have got to start asking themselves. And, you know, I covered, for people that are brand new to this, David, my show yesterday on the Highwire, at Highwire Talk, I have all these different luminaries talking about the science all over the country. It's a very in-depth show, so people can start to bone up on all the science that's around the world, and we get into details of exactly how this lawsuit came about. But, David, I want to thank you because mainstream media is owned by this pharmaceutical industry the same way our government is, and it's guys like you, InfoWars, and the work that you guys are doing that is really bringing the truth out. This is the new age. We are the grassroots. We are the ones reporting. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not just reporting. We're going to continue to sue the government of the United States and use the power we can for the people, designed by our great forefathers to take this country back and live in it the way we were meant to. We do not live in a totalitarian dictatorship. Our forefathers said we were the ones in control. We've got to take back that control, David. And so that's what we're fighting for, and that's what we want people to join us, to take back control of your body and this country. David, thank you so much for giving stories like this.
Well, no, I'm interested in protecting my health and my family's health. And as you pointed out, you're not going to see this on mainstream media. They get most of their advertising revenue from big pharmaceutical companies. And when I look at these ads that are airing on CNN and Fox News and so forth, and they start talking about whatever it is that they're selling and what it's going to do for you, they spend most of the ad talking about all these different adverse effects. And I just scratch my head and say, why would I ever take that? I don't want all these other things. So even if it's effective, even if it cures whatever it is that I'm taking it for, I don't want these other things, which are frequently far more serious than the condition that you're taking. It's exactly the analogy that you made there with measles. You know, I had measles when I was a kid. And you're, like you said, you're sick with a temperature for a couple of days, but you don't have lifetime consequences with this. And that's what we need to understand, that we need to be informed. They're not doing the due diligence for this. They're not doing the testing. These vaccine companies have absolutely no liability. It was taken away from them in 1986 with this promise. And you have exposed, with ICanDecide.com, you have exposed how this was a hand-waving fraud. They never did a single thing in 31 years. Absolutely amazing, right. Del. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, you can find him at Del Bigtree. Facebook has his program that's on a regular basis, Highwire Talk. That's at Highwire Talk. And you can go to ICanDecide.com. Take a look at that document there. Share that on social media. Send that to your congressman. Demand that something be done. It's going to have to be done from the bottom up. That's the only way you're going to get your freedom. Thank you, Del.
The Real Red Pill Plus, ladies and gentlemen. Our team is constantly on the lookout for newer and better ways to improve our products. That's why we're bringing you a brand new version of one of the newest fan favorite products, the Real Red Pill Plus. The Real Red Pill Plus is an all-new version of the powerhouse pregnenolone product. It features the same great formula that supports your heart, brain, healthy aging process with an all-new natural caffeine boost included. A powerful pregnenolone base, the Real Red Pill, has quickly become one of our fellow InfoWarriors' favorite products. Now, with an extra proprietary energy blend inside, including green tea extract, yerba mate, leaf extract, and more, you can get that extra pick-me-up while supporting your mind and body in a healthy way. It's got all the great stuff that Real Red Pill has, but it's also got the boost in it. Get the Real Red Pill Plus at InfoWarsStore.com.